all really solid, but nothing is amazing. But I had a good time with it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are back. The Eye of the Storm podcast. With my boy Daniel.
Hi.
Daniel, movie recommendation. What's the best recent thing you see?
So this week I watched Dark Water, which is a 2005 horror movie. It's basically, it was part of a group of movies where they made American remakes of successful Japanese horror movies. So Dark Water was one of them, and then also The Grudge and The Ring. And this one is basically about this woman who's going through this messy divorce, and she's starting a new life, getting a new job, moving into a new apartment with her daughter while she's fighting this custody battle. And weird things start to happen essentially. So like there's this persistent leak in her apartment that needs to keep needing to be fixed. And then her daughter has this imaginary friend, and she's acting out in school, and like a whole bunch of different things come together. And it all basically contributes to this nervous breakdown that the mother has. And it turns out that there's a haunting involved, basically, of a child that used to live in this building and so on. And it's all very psychological, it's very intense, and it's my favorite kind of horror movie. So there's no jump scares, there's just pure atmosphere and the sense of pressure and dread that builds up over the entire movie until it finally explodes. And it also kind of justifies my thesis that a good horror movie is not supposed to scare you. It's supposed to remind you of a time when you were scared. So this taps into basically this idea of kind of being this helpless situation when you rent an apartment somewhere or something like that, and you are dependent on other people to fix your problems, and they just won't do it, or they make simple things difficult, and so simple things become harder. And then because things don't get, they build up over time, and so right. So it's that sense like that a lot of people I think can empathize with, and that's basically where the horror comes from in this movie. And a ghost is in the mix, which means it can't be resolved, right? So it just the problems keep piling on, and they keep getting harder and harder to deal with until finally it escalates. And it's really good. It's really atmospheric. I was hooked from beginning to end. It's really well acted. It's really strong in atmosphere. So I highly recommend it.
I don't think I've ever seen that film. Okay, I'll definitely check out the trailer for that one and see. Cool. It came out in 2005. Oh, it's a UK film. It's a UK film.
I think American film.
Oh, it's American. Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's a US film, based on a Japanese movie, based on a Japanese book, I think.
Well, guys.
How about you? What's your best recent thing?
You know what? Yeah, I literally got so angry during my time off, not only because I was sick, but also because I couldn't find anything while I was ill, which was annoying me, like in terms of like new movies. So I literally just said, you know what, I'm just gonna watch a bunch of old films that I haven't seen in a long time. And I'm usually, it's not that I'm not against it, it's just that I thought that would be something that I like. The only times I've watched films that I used to watch again was with Jason time. So I said, you know what, let me just try it. And I just went through a whole bunch of old films, which I've got a bunch of films I watched. I watched The Hills Have Eyes, both movies. I watched, currently watching The Hitcher, watched Howl, which is an amazing film. I watched, I'm starting the Underworld franchise again. I watched the first two already. I'm going to watch the third one again this weekend. So yeah, I watched a bunch of films. But I'd probably say one of my favorite ones out of the ones I already watched was it'll probably be The Hills Have Eyes. If you guys haven't seen that, bunch of cannibals, bunch of eating human flesh, yeah, it's definitely a good one.
Is that the 1977 version or the 2006 version?
2006 version. Mm-hmm. And Hills Have Eyes 2 as well, which I watched. I don't know when that came out, but obviously it came out after that. But yeah,
so usually horror remakes are they don't have a good track record, right?
I haven't seen them that came out in the 90s.
They don't capture really what was scary about the first one, and they are basically just cashing in on the success of the original and so on. We started with The Strangers, but there's others too. And this one is not like that. Is what you're saying?
Well, I haven't seen obviously the first one, so I wouldn't be able to make that judgment to say, okay.
Yeah. But it stands on its own.
Yeah, for me it stands on its own, definitely. It's not, jump scares. It's not one of those ones. It's just one of the, just cannibals. So you already just get that uncomfortable feeling of disgust when you're watching these type of films. And obviously, I love the whole the element of group of people in a situation, especially with Hills Have Eyes too, because there's a group of soldiers now that were facing army people in the army that were facing the cannibals. So I just love that whole group of people in a sticky situation trying to get themselves out of the situation. That's how I started the movie The Cave. If no one's seen it, I've already seen it as well. Love that film. I should go and watch it. I watched it a long time ago. I haven't finished it yet, but I'm watching it again this weekend. But yeah, The Cave as well, similar to that. They're not cannibals this time, but I think people that were stuck in the cave years ago ended up mutating from what I remembered, and then now obviously the group of, I don't know what they are, but they went to go and visit the cave to do some studies. I don't know what the actual term of what their job title is. Sorry, not the term. I don't know what their job title actually is, but I think they're like some sort of researchers or something. They went to the cave and then they anticipated those people who ended up getting locked in the cave and mutated. So it's a fun film. I feel like The Hills Have Eyes and these, those type of films for me is films that are kind of missing in this new generation. I don't know why the films now are just, they don't have films, those type of films I'm talking about, The Cave, Hills Have Eyes, Ruins. I don't know if you've seen Ruins. Have you seen Ruins?
I don't think so.
Okay, that was another good one. Yeah.
So what is it about these that is missing from today's?
They don't have that whole, when a group of friends or a group of people are in a struggle, they're in a situation of survival. Pretty much like survival type movies. They have survival type movies, but it's not with a group of people or a group of friends, or you know what I'm saying? It's usually singular or just a couple. So yeah. I feel like it's just missing that fun in it just had that fun and that it had that fun feeling when you was watching the movies back in the day. Now I don't really see films like that. I don't know why.
Right.
I think a lot of those films you could tell that they were low budget. Well, no, not a lot of them. I think The Hitcher is low budget, but that's a couple. But still, also Wrong Turn. Watch that as well. Love the first one. After the first one, it gets a bit ridiculous, rubbish. I didn't bother watching the third or fourth, but that's like I was saying. I think it's kind of, I don't know why they don't really. Well, in terms of what's missing is just the whole group survival aspect, which I don't know why they don't include a lot in the movies. Maybe they do. Maybe I just haven't found them yet. But the new films is just not like the old ones. Which is a bit annoying, but
yeah. And it seems like there are a whole bunch of slashers out there. But I think this whole group of friends goes to a remote location and then they're killed slowly one by one. That seems to have been out of favor.
Yeah, I don't really see that as well. Maybe I don't know. Maybe it's a thing where they were a big hit back in the day, but now not so much. I don't know. Now that we've kind of given our audience movie recommendations for today's episode, Sting.
Right, Sting. I like this movie quite a bit. It's a very simple, straightforward movie.
I'm not surprised you like this film. I'm actually not surprised. Yeah. So let me keep it.
This is basically set up and pay off the movie. Almost everything important is set up, and everything that is set up is paid off in this movie. Like an hour into it, I just started counting things, and that were being said that ended up mattering. And I always find that very satisfying. But yeah, I think it's a very simple premise. It's a very straightforward plot. The main characters, which I think are the father and the daughter, are very likable, and everybody else is a caricature. But I think those two characters are enough to carry the movie. I've got some issues with it. I think there's only one really creative kill, and the monster is just a spider. And both of those things I think could have been better. But I kind of enjoyed just the simplicity of it, the straightforwardness of it, and the fact that it actually delivered on what it set out to do, which not every movie does, and not every horror movie does this year or in recent years. So on that basis, I think I had a good time with it. Even if I could see the flaws, I still had a good time, and none of the flaws were a deal breaker for me.
So you're pretty much, so you liked it for its simplicity?
Yeah, it was just no nonsense. We promised you a monster about a killer spider, and we gave you a movie about a killer spider.
But in terms of promise, that kind of falls into my point about I felt like it didn't give me what I expected, which isn't an issue, by the way.
Yeah.
I think obviously from what I was looking at a trailer, I thought this was going to be serious, not gritty, but like just it was just gonna be serious and dark. I wasn't expecting like the whole comedic tone whatsoever. When it started, like as soon as it started, with obviously you got the lady with the amnesia. Was it amnesia? I believe. Not amnesia. Not amnesia.
Like the dementia.
Yeah, dementia. Yes. And then obviously with her interaction with the spider, the guy who kills the spiders. That sounds like crap. Like I just felt straight away this is one of those like what do they say, horror comedies. I wouldn't say that, but it was heavy. Like the you can tell the comedy, the whole comedy element was definitely heavy in this film. I wasn't expecting. I didn't have an issue with it. Overall, I think it was above all right. It was definitely was it like good? I think I had an all right time. I definitely do believe that they played on phobias very well. They kind of at times they had me seeing things that are not there because I hate spiders. And whenever I encounter a spider, I always, when something moves to my side, I always think it's a spider, but it's genuinely just like a fly or something. So they definitely at times my skin was crawling with the spider. Even though the spider did look unrealistic at times, and like I said, I did feel that the third act was a bit rushed. If not rushed, but it felt a bit too short. But besides that, and I did not like the mother's character. We'll get into that later. But yeah, I do agree. The relationship dynamic between the father and the daughter, I enjoyed very well. I thought that was unexpected. My reaction to their performance was definitely unexpected. I didn't think I was gonna like the daughter as much because she started a bit off. I don't know. She started a bit off weird, but then she got really good. Like as it progressed, I was like, oh, okay. This movie is like. It's all right. Like actually, yeah, I wasn't mad. I wasn't mad at the film. I didn't feel like I wasted money. But at the same time, I do think it should have gone to streaming. I don't know. It just felt like a streaming movie rather than a film that deserves to go on screens. I don't know. That's just what I was getting from this film. But
so talking about the main character, I saw the main character, which is I think the daughter, right? One thing I quite liked about her is that she was like an 80s character, like. There used to be this whole genre of children going out having adventures, right? And often encountering something supernatural or a monster or just having an adventure. And that's kind of almost entirely fallen away. And even though those characters usually were boys, this character was like Charlotte was exactly that kind of character, right? In terms of her demeanor, her psychology, her like the way she acted, right? Just constantly getting into trouble, being curious, being stubborn, being independent. I really enjoyed that. It was like a throwback. Like I hadn't seen a character like this in a long time.
I don't know what 80 characters are like, so I couldn't really comment too much on that. But in terms of the whole adventure point that you brought across, yeah, I think she was definitely when you're young, you're pretty much less a lot of the times, so you don't really know the extent of how bad. You don't really know the extent of your actions, pretty much. You know what I'm saying? And obviously the consequences that it can come up with. So she definitely was adventurous, especially when she went to go to what's his name, Eric, right after the dad said stay away from him, which was a bit funny.
In fairness, any 12-year-old is going to do that, right?
Exactly.
So I actually think she struck a good balance between being a 12-year-old child and not being annoying.
Yeah.
Right. Like she would do these things. Like she would like be stubborn and be belligerent and not do whatever she wanted. But also, like there's a way to make this kind of character annoying or grating or tedious. And I never thought she was. I thought like she really carried the movie. And then on top of that, you have the father who's trying to like keep this family together and trying to build a relationship with her. Like this is not is this the third movie this year where there's a step parent we've seen that tries to kind of bond with a stepchild? That seems to be a popular thing at the moment. But yeah, I think even though like the most annoying thing about him was that he was a complete punching bag. But other than that, he was like likable and generally understood. Like his frustration and exhaustion was just building, and that was before the monster showed up. So I think those two characters together really carry the movie.
How do you feel when you pretty much exposed, or just not even exposed, but revealed to Charlotte that the dad's only 30 minutes away? When he said, I said, damn.
That was 30 minutes away?
that her real dad was 30 minutes
Oh,
away.
yeah. I thought actually. So I think that scene worked quite well, because that is something that he had been sitting on for a while, right, and had agreed to not tell her because it wasn't really his place. So that's debatable, but like it makes sense that comes out in like a heated moment like this. What didn't really make sense is that the mother reacted so badly to it that she was basically like almost broke up with him on the spot.
Honestly,
like that made her very unlikable.
Honestly, Daniel, that's what I'm saying. The mother felt so, not her performance, as in not the actor, but her character. She just felt so annoying and useless. I remember there was a time when, the scene where they were near the end, where they were actually against the spider. I don't know where they was, but you know when you throw trash and it goes to, I think they were like in the basement or something. I'm not too sure of the flat, but yeah. And then the spider was gonna kill them. She hid behind Charlotte.
Right.
Okay, I get it. She's holding the cool, maybe because she was hiding behind Charlotte, but she was holding the baby. But the way she was hiding, the way that she was hiding behind Charlotte, the way that she was screaming, she was the one that was acting like the child. And then especially her reaction as well to when the dad, what's his name? Do you remember his name?
Ethan.
When Ethan obviously revealed to Charlotte that your dad's he pretty much left you.
Yeah.
Her reaction, I get it, you're angry, but it's like you're not acknowledging whatsoever about what, like, the situation at hand or what happened led to him to that point. And even like the way Ethan was even confining in her at a point where he said he started to lose or something, and she was just like bypassed it and said, no, something about you're not losing it, you're losing us, or something like that, where she just kind of bypassed his issue. And I was like, you're a rubbish wife.
It really felt like the script said we need conflict here, so we're gonna find one, and it didn't really feel like they were like on the brink of that, right? Like they were in a very tough situation. They were both overworked and 2 small children and so on, but they were kind of keeping it together, and they kind of were a team for most of the movie. And then suddenly, like, she acts like this, and I thought that was more poor writing as opposed to an unlikable character, because it didn't feel like it came from her personality. It felt like the writer said, "Oh, we have to have some drama here, and so we're gonna have her overreact like this."
I agree. How do you feel about like the spider? Obviously, like the mechanics of the spider in terms of.
So I think that is kind of a weak point for me. It's like I think the monster works, right? The fast-growing thing. There's this whole thing about how spiders are just there to feed and hunt and kill, and like the exterminator says, Frank, I think his name is, like, dogs will love you, cats will sort of love you, spiders will kill you. That was like a neat way of putting it. My main problem with it is that it's just a spider.
Yeah.
And if it's really a spider, why make it an alien? Like that just seems completely redundant. Yeah. But if it's just an alien that looks a bit like a spider, why does it never evolve into something else? Or why doesn't it have, like, other than the feeding call, the spider doesn't do anything that a spider wouldn't do. Yeah. Right? Like, there's no fantastical element, there's no alien quality to it. I think that seems something where you either just make it a spider, like make it an exotic pet or something, or you make it an alien, in which case it looks a bit like a spider, but over time, as it grows, it becomes more alien or something. Or maybe just Charlotte thinks it's a spider initially, but as it grows, it becomes apparent it's something else. That seems a bit weird. Like, that you have those two things together seems kind of pointless.
Yeah, that was weird to me as well. Do you think it should have multiplied instead of growing?
Maybe. Like the giant spider thing, I think works fine. This whole being stalked and all these different scenes where the spider crawls on the ceiling and stalks people, and all these things work just fine. So it being a spider is fine. It being a giant spider is fine. It just never does anything interesting. Like I said earlier, there's this one kill, right? This neighbor whose entire personality is grieving for her son. That is actually like a kill where something was happening, and I think that's the parrot, and that's it. I think it doesn't. I was kind of expecting it to kind of, like, in the beginning we set up all the different neighbors, right? All the different tenants, and I was expecting that the movie was setting them up so that the spider would kill them one by one, and it didn't really.
Yeah.
And the kills were not specific to their personalities or to anything else. It's just the spider kills one person once in the way that it's been set up that spiders kill, which is paralyze people, liquefy them from the insides, and then eat them. And that's all that happens. And then its next victims are the parents who end up being freed. So I thought that was a little bit weak. Like maybe have the initial sequence where the spider's growing. I think actually the spider growing and us kind of knowing that something is up and everybody's ignoring it, and the spider gets bigger and bigger until finally it starts attacking. I think that worked really well. It was just way too long. And then the part where the spider actually starts killing people is too short, so that we don't have time to do anything interesting.
Yeah, that's what I felt like with Spider as well. I felt like it was too short, but he didn't necessarily see enough of the spider's threat. Like we saw it grow, and we saw it was like, like obviously, the turning point, obviously, when Eric was starting to feed the spider, that's when we're like, oh, okay, this is a unexpected turn of events. Because obviously Eric was conveying his concerns about a creature, which obviously he's got a reflection of just like an unknown species, right? So the fact that he ended up feeding the spider ended up growing big. Like we saw the tank, obviously the tank that he kept the spider in. It's like, okay, now we're starting to feel the threat. But we just saw, I think previous said that was only one kill, right? Or it was the actual one of the spider exterminators, and then it was the parrot. So we didn't really see much of the spider. So then when the spider ended up like coming into the living room of Charlotte's, and he took the mum and the dad, that's why I felt like, whoa, like. And like when I don't know, it just felt unexpected, and it felt like I think it was like 20 minutes after the film, so maybe 10, I don't know, maybe 20, 15 minutes after the film. When that happened, I was like, is there going to be enough time to actually, just show the extent of how like the pretty much like the threat of this spider? Because it didn't feel like there was enough time to actually show that. That's why I just felt like the third act was a bit too short, because I think it was mostly concentrating around the family, Charlotte, and obviously the dad. And so I think, I don't know, do you think they kind of focused on one? They tried to incorporate both both elements into one, in terms of like the whole relationship dynamic and the spider. Do you think they kind of concentrated on one more than the other?
Maybe there's just way too much time spent on the family dynamic and on the growth period, right? And then but then it raises the question of, okay, what's the actual point of the movie, right? Is it to set up some characters so that we can watch a spider kill them one by one? And it's not that, because that doesn't really happen, right? That happens once and that's it. Is it about the spider causing something, right? Like it causes the family to grow together, right? When they had been drifting apart. And it's once it, like this is not the first time this year that the horror has been like a motivator for a family to rediscover how important family is, right? That was there in Night Swim, that was there in a few other. I think Imaginary was the same way. I think that's fine. It's just a bit basic, maybe. One of the problems with this movie, I think, is that it lacks that kind of focus. Like it's not clear what the main point was. Like if it's not just a creature feature and it's not just a family movie, but it's kind of in between. It doesn't like you said, it could have focused on one of these, and if it had done that, then it could have done that better. Maybe. I don't know.
I do agree. I don't think it was clear. I don't know. It just felt like another spider film, but obviously the twist. I think the twist for me was the whole comedy that was that was incorporated in it. I don't know. It just felt like another spider film.
I didn't think it was that funny. Like there's some comedy to it, but there weren't jokes, and I didn't laugh out loud, and I didn't find many of the characters funny. Like the exterminator is a bit of a comedy character, but like in a stereotypical way.
Yeah.
Where I thought, okay, can we just go and do something else? Like it wasn't funny. And other than that, I didn't think there was much comedy in this, really.
And I'm not saying I found it funny, but there was definitely a comedic undertone to it. Like
there was a wackiness to it. Like some of the characters were eccentric, like especially Eric, but also the landlady. was that Helga, or I don't know, but those were like exaggerated cartoonish characters in some ways. Like specifically the aunt that owns the building. Like, and this is another aspect of the family theme, right? Like, did it matter to the story that this was like a family business, right? That the landlady was the aunt and the brother-in-law was basically being hired as as the groundskeeper, as the superintendent, whatever. There was clearly a theme of family here, and this wasn't a good one, right? This wasn't like this was not a happy family.
I think they did that to kind of like emphasize on how out of place Ethan felt, because maybe he felt like it was fighting a losing battle and trying to like, you know, to prove that he is part of the family, because I think that was kind of like showed with the argument between him and Charlotte when he was literally telling her, I am your father, I've been here, and obviously she was like, no, blah blah blah. So I think that, you know, the whole, you know,
meanwhile his boss is his sister-in-law who treats him like trash.
Yeah.
So that's a good point. Yeah, I think that's probably what the point of that was.
How do you know that? Now that you know, do you think it was effective now? Do you think it worked for you now, or it doesn't really have any?
My problem is that I enjoyed my time watching it, and I couldn't point to a particular thing that didn't work for me. But it's all a bit basic, and I said earlier that that's its charm, and I think that is insofar as Spider hatches, grows, starts killing people, and credits, right? Like that simplicity of it I like. But in the meantime, the whole family aspect of it is really by the numbers, right? Like, stepfather and daughter don't get along, and then in the end they realize the importance of family. I've seen that 1,000 times, and it didn't do anything different, right? And I think like if it was in the background, that would have been fine, but it seemed to be like the entire focus and the entire point of the story. So if the entire movie is a vehicle for that sentiment, that's fine, but it left me wanting more, right? And similarly, all the monster kills, or the entire monster aspect of it, also left me wanting more. I wanted the spider to grow into something more interesting, and I wanted it to do more interesting things, and then it didn't. Like it just kills one person, starts killing the main family, and then gets killed. In a way that was foreshadowed, and that's each individual step is fine. It's just when the movie was over, I said I enjoyed this, but I wish it had been more.
But I'm just like, it's not that I'm confused that you liked it, because you said what you disliked about it. So what is it? So besides that, obviously, you know, it worked. Okay, cool, it worked for you. And it was kind of it was basic. So what is it? What exactly? So pretty much what did you like about this film? I know that you said points, but was there anything specific? Like, was there any highlight moments where you were like, yeah, this film works for me?
So I like monster movies. I like straightforward movies in the sense that there's one idea and we're going to go do this one idea, right? And whenever movies do that successfully, I enjoy that more than complicated movies with many subplots and many characters and lots of stuff, right? Yeah. So just as the general kind of movie that this is my favorite kind. It also reminded me of The Blob quite a bit, which is one of my favorite movies, because it's basically got the same structure as The Blob, right? So monster comes from space, starts growing, a few characters know about it, but the general public doesn't. And then once it's grown to be large enough, it starts attacking people, and then in the end it gets defeated in a gimmicky way. So it's almost like they took, like, it's almost a Blob ripoff in that sense, because it's very close in structure and in the basic idea. All the details are different, but it's very similar. But because it does that template well, it's a template I like. I ended up enjoying the movie largely because so many movies these days are kind of unfocused and bloated. Not always both, but often they don't really know what they're doing, so they just do a bunch of stuff, and they end up doing way too much. There's way too many characters. There's way too much stuff going on. There's stuff happening and entire subplots that have nothing to do with the point of the movie, and it almost always makes the movie worse, in my opinion. And so when a movie comes along that just has a simple idea and does that idea and it does it well, then I enjoy that. And everything was kind of pretty good, right? And there was nothing in it that didn't work or that ruined it or that was just outright stupid. I think almost every aspect could easily be improved, but none of it is bad. I think that's kind of my takeaway with it.
Because with this film, I feel like there wasn't, like, even coming to this discussion, I was a bit not scared, but I was like,
what are we going to talk about?
Yeah, because it just felt like, you know, it doesn't really. It was like you said, it was like a basic premise. Yeah. It was executed. Of course, there could have been. I think each point there could have been it could have been improved, but it was still done well. It wasn't bad, which you're definitely right. It wasn't bad, but there wasn't really any personally for me. There wasn't really any talking points in this film, which I was like, ooh, that was not out of the ordinary, but that was something which was just like a highlight moment. Do you know what I'm saying?
But honestly, I had almost the same thing with Furiosa last week, where every piece of it is pretty good, but I walked away saying, okay, I kind of enjoyed this, but it feels like something's missing.
Oh wow!
I think Furiosa is a much better movie than this in terms of just quality, like just raw quality. But I think they're kind of similar in that way, and that somehow there isn't this set piece. Like there is nothing spectacular in it, like this one memorable scene or this one memorable line that people will quote. It's kind of missing that. It's all fine and it's all solid, but it felt like they took out the good bits.
I hear what you're saying, but I loved Furiosa, so yeah. I can't compare this one. I get what you're saying, but I can't compare this one with Sting. I love Furiosa.
Yeah. No, like in a very abstract, technical way, right? Like they're not the same movie.
I see what you're saying. It's just with this one, I don't know, man. I think this one should have gone to streaming. I don't know what you think about that. Do you think it deserve to go in the theaters?
So I don't really like the idea of straight to streaming movies, or that being a mark of low quality. I just don't.
True. I don't necessarily think if it goes straight to streaming is low quality. Maybe the way that I said it does definitely it gives off that impression. No. I just felt like this.
I mean, that's what straight to cable movies or straight to DVD movies in the past were, right? Like the good ones go to cinemas, the bad ones go straight to DVD or cable or whatever. Yeah. And straight to streaming seems in the same vein.
Yeah,
I'm not sure why I resist that idea.
Yeah,
I think part of it is if it's a bad movie, then I don't want to watch it on streaming either.
I don't think it wasn't a bad movie. Well, when I say like this should have gone straight to streaming, I'm saying I don't see this film making box office success. I think
it's not. It's got like a box office of less than 2 million. Like this is not a success.
Exactly. Like,
and it's a bit of a shame because it's actually a really solid movie. I think of all the movies we've talked about this year, not that many I would want to rewatch because they often have some kind of deal breaker in them where they just do something dumb that kind of just tanks the entire movie for me. Not all movies, obviously, but most movies. And this one just didn't. My complaints are not or I don't rise to that level.
I think the reason why this one kind of obviously isn't a box office hit, even though you're saying it was a good film, is because I don't think there was anything in the trailer or anything even in the film that kind of separates, like not even separates, or kind of shows why this film is different from other movies. Even though other movies, even though other movies, a lot of even like the films that do have box office success are pretty much similar, but there's something about that film that piques someone's interest. I don't think this one does that.
There's no big hook, right? It's just a spider that kills people, and it doesn't do a lot of that. I think it's probably you'll probably get the most enjoyment out of it if you think of it as a family movie. It's like about a family finding each other in a crisis.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of movies, right? Like a lot of movies can be described this way, but I think that's what it does well. Like I think the ending is a little bit weak, where they just hug and that's the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Like I'm not sure what exactly it should have done. But like the ending is probably one of the weaker parts.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I think its core is a family finding each other, and I guess actually this is one of the probably not the first, but one of the first movies that showed the post-COVID status quo in terms of people working from home.
Okay.
Right. I like them. I'm sure there are others, but I just haven't seen very many of them. I think because the big movies that have come out so far were written before or during COVID and not after. And this one might be different. But just this, like multiple people working at home in cramped spaces, like that is something that's a reality for many people now, and that wasn't true 5 years ago. And so that by itself doesn't make the movie, but like it's not like I have not seen very many movies that do this. I suspect that we'll get more of those, but like in the coming year or two. But I think this was one of the first ones where it actually A, happened, and B, mattered in the plot. Because that is a stressor in itself, right? Like people are very cramped, and there's this blurring of the lines between work and personal time and family time, right? Where you're always working, but you're also always taking care of family, right? Like if we haven't experienced that ourselves, then we might have seen that in other people, like in the backgrounds of their Teams meetings. You know what I mean? Like it feels real, right? In a way that many movies these days don't.
Do you feel like, because speaking, like you mentioned cramped, and the first thing that came into my mind was ventilators, because the use of ventilator was definitely heavy in this one. Do you think that kind of into place, that was like intentional, like that kind of fell into place with the whole post-COVID, everyone indoors, everyone's all cramped? Because the use of the ventilators, I enjoyed it, because obviously not just with the spiders, obviously with Charlotte as well. Like she was using that for her way to get around the whole flipping building. So
I mean, that seems to be an American thing, right? Like these big vents, and we had the same thing in The Strangers, right, with the crawl spaces. Like this is not something you get in European houses, and this seems to be an American thing at maybe very specific types of buildings. I don't know if there's any American architects watching. Let us know in the comments. But this is something that I know from movies and from nowhere else. So this whole thing about vents that people can crawl through and just look into apartments, that's crazy. That doesn't feel real to me, but I've seen it in other movies, so I guess it's a thing.
I mentioned earlier in terms of what I think they did do well was kind of like triggering, people's phobias, especially with the spider. For me, do you think? But one thing I personally felt, I think they should have kind of like utilized the spider in its in a smaller version. When it was in its smaller form first, before I don't have an issue with it growing, but I think they should have utilized, when it's smaller first, and because you know how and you know how spiders their hiding spots, right? I don't think they necessarily did that well, or they incorporated that much, because I think they could have definitely maximized the whole threat factor from the spider if they like I said, just kind of showed him first how dangerous he is first when it's small. Maybe with just a couple of bites with a couple of people, which gives more kills. But he's popping out from hiding spots which are really which are pretty much realistic. Which are pretty much realistic. You know what I'm saying? Like under the bed, behind the covers. You know what I'm saying? Do you think maybe they should have shown more of the spider's ability when it comes to how dangerous it is when it was smaller? Or they should have just gone to big spider?
I mean, this whole sequence of the spider growing and slowly becoming more dangerous was already very long. But there wasn't much of an escalation, right? Where it didn't seem to do very much other than crawl around and start. It does kill, I think, the parrot first and then a human. And that's a matter of becoming bigger, right? And as it gets bigger, it goes after bigger prey, and eventually it reaches humans. And I don't remember exactly what happened with the dog, if the spider went after the dog or if the dog just ran into the vents. But there was a sense of the dog being in danger as well.
Yeah, it took the dog, I believe.
Yeah, I saw it at 10 p.m. on Saturday, so some details are a little bit blurry now. But yeah, I don't my main thing is that it didn't do very many spider things. And it specifically didn't lean into spider phobias very much. It didn't crawl on people's faces very much. There's this one scene where it kills the neighbor and it crawls into her mouth to eat her insides. That's a classic arachnophobia thing, right? But other than that, there's not a whole lot. There's some crawling on the ceilings, and it doesn't do very many. I think that falls under it doesn't do very many interesting things.
Yeah.
It just does basic spider things.
Mm.
And like the script could have gone a little crazier in some places.
Do you think they were trying to go off from the angle where, cause you know how spiders with flies, right? They don't kill them straight away, but they wrap them in.
Well, they did do that with the neighbor. They make a big deal out of it.
With that neighbor, I mean, like the other, because obviously I think it was only one kill, right, so far in terms of humans.
One human, one parrot, yeah.
Yeah, in terms of like the whole family, Charlotte's family, do you think the reason why they never killed them was they were kind of they're like, you know, they were showing how, you know how spiders treated, they don't, like I said, spiders don't kill insects straight away. So do you think they were kind of trying to mimic that?
Well, it was going to, but then Charlotte came to rescue them.
Yeah. And yeah,
like it was going to paralyze them and liquefy them from the insides. It had done that with the neighbor, and then I thought it was clear that it was going to do that with the parents too. And it just it was never going to do that, right? Because it's about the family being reunited. But I mean, that's the one spider thing it does, right? It doesn't do very much else. I don't know. It doesn't crawl on people. It doesn't. I don't know what. I was reminded of one experience I had once where I was living in a country where air conditioning is common, right? Which we are in the UK, we don't use air conditioning generally, but a bug had crawled through the air conditioning. I was sleeping and my head was directly under the air conditioning, and a bug had crawled through it from the outside and then fell on my face and woke me up. And that's really creepy, right? You wake up, something's crawling on your face, you don't know what it is, right? That seems like that would be one of the standard things to do. Yeah. And it didn't do very many of these. And I don't know that it's a better movie for it. It seems to me like it shouldn't have done the cliches, but there's something missing, right? It should have done some creepier stuff, and then maybe change those things as it gets bigger, right? Maybe it starts out doing normal spider things, and then eventually it's so big that it starts doing monstrous things.
I think what they were trying to do, they got it wrong, because I think what they were trying to do was, okay, cool, the family's going through problems and they're oblivious to the growing threat that's happening in their own home. So I think I understand that take, but at the same time, it takes away from, like we said, the fear factor from the spider itself. So
I'm not sure. It just doesesn't do cool things. I think it's the bottom point, right? I really like the build-up of suspense, right? That we see the spider growing, and and eventually it starts it's very clearly established that this is bad news, right? That spiders are killers and they will go after whatever prey it can handle, and as it gets bigger, eventually that means people, right? And one thing I actually thought that was really effective was the aunt with the dementia, where she was present enough to realize that there was danger, but too far gone to do anything about it. And that must be terrifying. Right? I can imagine if you are on that kind of sweet spot kind of thing, where you know something's wrong, but you're no longer in a position to do something about it. That must be terrifying. Even more than dementia already is. And especially in the opening sequence, I thought that was pretty effective. But it also didn't go very far.
Because it feels like you're kind of living in hell. There's a whole replay of, So, that was definitely a highlight moment for me as well. So would you say that was your highlight moment in the film?
Probably. Yeah, maybe. There's this whole scene where she's watching TV, and you can see on her face that she knows something is up, and she can hear the scratching on the walls, but she can't do anything about it, and she just pretends that everything is fine. That was an unusually subtle moment in that movie. And then you've got the abusive sister who just wants to be left alone and is definitely not going to help, and right, it just keeps getting worse.
Yeah, 100%. I'm just thinking, I'm even though this was an alright film for me, above alright, like I said, borderline good for me. It still makes you wonder, is this kind of the standard of film? Because has there been any good horror, in terms of, when I say film, I mean horrors, has there been any good horrors lately?
The ones I've seen have not been great, and I'm sure there have been good ones, but the ones we've talked about, I think, have all been terrible.
Yeah.
Let me check the list. Imaginary was a broken movie. Night Swim was a mess. Abigail was pretty good, but it had a similar problem of the good parts are good, but there's not enough of them.
Yeah.
And then The Strangers was a dumpster fire. And then Primborn had like that. That's probably the least well known of all the ones we've talked about, and I like that one quite a bit. But I think our takeaway on that one was also that it was kind of pointless. Like that the haunting was kind of pointless and didn't add very much to the movie. So yeah, it seems like half measures.
Yeah, like
right?
What's going on with the whole horror genre? Like, is there are they using Chat GPT for these films or something like that? Like, is this?
So, but one thing I really enjoyed about this one was that it didn't have many jump scares. Like, there might have been one or two, but it's not like one thing I really despise about the horror genre is scared person walks down dark hallway, there's intense music, and then there's a jump scare, and you see the jump scare coming from a mile away, and you're still startled, and then you hate yourself for falling for it, right? Like that's my experience watching Insidious movies, for example. And I actively dislike it. Like I think it's actually bad.
Wait.
It's bad storytelling. It's a tired trope. It's lazy, and this one doesn't really do it. Like I think this one actually builds suspense in an effective way.
Yeah.
But then it stops at like 60%, and I don't know why. Like, can't you just workshop some cool kills, like 2 or 3 cool kills, and put them in your movie? In your movie about a monster spider, like leave out all the things about the meteor shower and the eggs and all of those things. Just make it an exotic pet. Like I have a scene that justifies why Charlotte has a pet spider, and then over time people realize that something is up with the spider. Like that should take a scene or two, and would be much easier, more simpler, and would free up some time for like some cool kills. I don't know, like I said, I really enjoyed my time with the movie, but I also felt unsatisfied.
Yeah.
Because it felt like they cut out some stuff.
Yeah, that's the same feeling as well. I felt unsatisfied. It wasn't a bad movie.
But the fact that it wasn't broken was already made it above average.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Like this is not a mess. Like this is a solid, streamlined, competently written movie, but that is a little bit phoned in. Right, and that makes it above average, at least in the ones I've seen this year. I just, and you know, it's one of the few that I would rewatch if it came on streaming, like in 2 months or whatever. But like, I can't say I'm impressed with it.
Yeah, that's how I forgot. I was just confused why this film in particular received a worldwide release.
Yeah.
Literally, I think that's what's bugging me even more. Like I said, it was a borderline good film for me. Above average, it's definitely not average film. Above average, borderline good. I just don't get why this film received a worldwide release. It just doesn't make sense to me. That's why when going into the film, I went like at first with the way it started with the whole dementia, I was like, ooh, more meets the eye, with this film. Like that was an interesting thing. So I thought there was going to be more like interesting, just more interesting scenes like that, but it didn't kind of progress into that clever, what is it? Would you say is I don't know, the clever scene? I'm just call it clever scene.
Yeah.
There wasn't really more clever scenes like that, if that makes sense. So I thought it was going to be a film filled with that, which is what I was like, okay, now I understand why this is like a worldwidely released film. It's at first I thought it was like Barbarian, because like I said, Barbarian, what you're presented is not what you actually are given when you watch the film, which Barbarian ended up being one of my favorite horrors of all time. This one I thought was starting off like that, I thought it was going to go like that, but then no, it just ended up just being kind of like, a competent film. So yeah.
It's the exact opposite, right? It's exactly what you think it is.
Yes, literally. Well, not for me at first, because I didn't expect it to be, I didn't expect it to have the whole.
I mean, based on the trailer and
yeah.
Right? Like the opening scene, you're right, it suggests something different, but then that ends up not really being the movie.
Yeah.
One thing I also found a little bit striking is that there's a lot of, like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of setup and payoff in this, and that's what reminded me of The Blob as well. That everything important is set up, and almost everything that is set up is later paid off. So the fact that Charlotte is kind of this stubborn, independent explorer who's constantly climbing through the bends and kind of just takes stuff she shouldn't be taking and doesn't take orders well and that sort of thing, for example. And there's a bunch of stuff like that. That ends up mattering later on, or like the thing about how she doesn't want the mothballs because she thinks they cause cancer, and then it ends up being the thing that repels the spider. Like, there's a lot of attention paid to the details, and also this whole thing about filling super soakers with mothball water. That's a very 80s thing. Like that's like children finding the secret weapon against the aliens and then taking the fight to them with super soakers filled with the magic substance. Like, that's very 80s. So I liked it on that level. But there's a whole, like, the movie's full of this stuff, right? Like, and as I watched it, like, I kept just finding and noticing additional things. But then there's also a lot of stuff that doesn't matter, like the fact that this is an Australian movie, but it's set in the US. Doesn't matter. Like, this movie could have been the exact same way if it had been set in Australia, and like all the actors in this are Australian.
She hadn't even actually realized.
These are not American actors, as far as I know. It's an Australian production. It just, I guess, it's more marketable to pretend it's American.
Wouldn't it be more marketable to present it in Australia, though? Because obviously they're known for their crazy.
I think foreign movies don't play generally well in the US. So you could probably sell it better in the US if you just pretend you're an American movie. Maybe like, whether or not that's true or not, that's probably the strategy. But like,
you know what,
this would have been much more authentic if it had been obviously in Australia, but also make it meta a little bit. Like Australia is the place that is known for its dangerous wildlife, right? So so that just makes it more plausible that they have a crazy killer spider.
Yeah, that's what I was literally going to say.
Lead it to that stereotype.
Literally, it would have been so much funner if, for example, they were in Australia first, and then the door ended up finding the insect somewhere, but they're obviously planning to move to America. She brings the spider as a pet, puts it in a little tank or whatever. They move to America, and then that's when all the madness starts happening. Because, like you said, it does play on the stereotype. They brought a creature from foreign land, Australia, which is known for its crazy animals and crazy sized insects and spiders as well that we will see all over TikTok. That does play. I think that would have worked very well. It would be more funner.
Yeah, like that would have made it. They would have given it maybe an angle. I don't know. I have no idea why these filmmakers chose to not do that. But it doesn't matter that it's set in the US. Like you wouldn't have blizzards in Australia, but there would be some other reason for why they can't leave the house. Like, that's not. You don't have to contrive. Like, you don't have to fake all the accents just so you have a reason to not leave the house. Like, that's nonsense. So there would have been a way. The fact that the older members of the family are German does not matter at all. Like, this is something that movies do occasionally, but usually it's like they know about Krampus or some other folklore monster, but that's not the case here either. Like, it creates some distance between the younger generation and the older generation. But that's kind of it. They didn't need that. And I don't know if they were faking two sets of accents, an American accent and a German accent. I don't know. It's just weird. Like why add this in if it's not important to the story?
Yeah.
Like, doesn't it just make everything more complicated? So there's a whole bunch of stuff in this movie that, and then there's also the thing about why even add in the alien factor. Like, why make it an alien? It also adds nothing to the story. So it's just a little bit like, it's not, if it was just one of these things, then it would be not that big a deal. But it's like three at least, where you say, why did you do this? But none of them break the movie. They're kind of neutral. Like, none of these have a big impact on the story, but that their time and effort was spent on adding these things to the movie.
Yeah.
And I don't see the benefit.
Yeah, I think the Australian concept would have been much better. Much better. Yeah.
And just easier and cheaper, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
No, I didn't really notice it. Like, if I hadn't looked this up, I wouldn't necessarily have noticed. The accents all seem fine. But it just seems so unnecessary.
Same. I did not know this as well. But,
And the whole thing in a script that otherwise is so careful with the details. It's just puzzling, right? It's not a problem with the movie. It's just puzzling.
yeah. Some of the decisions are puzzling, but hey, man. Last thoughts and ratings, Daniel.
I'm giving this like a 5 out of 7.5. Just because like it's all really solid, but nothing is amazing. But I had a good time with it, and I just keep finding things to like about it. But none of it rises to a level where I say, "Oh wow, that's cool."
I'm gonna give this definitely not giving it a 5. I'd say it's fine between 5.5 and 6. I'd say 5.5. I'd probably say 6. I don't know. I mean, I'll give it a 6. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Just touching 6, because I don't think it deserves a 5.5. It was way better than a 5. Like 5.5 is just slightly above average, and I do believe this was a film that's like it's above average. Like I said, borderline good. So I'd give it a 6, just touching 6. Like you said, it was above basic, above average. There were definitely for me some comedic moments which I did chuckle with, especially the what's his name, the spider exterminator. I did enjoy the relationship dynamic between the father and the daughter. Overall, it was an alright experience. It's just, I think they could have just did a bit more. I didn't understand what kind of distinguished this from other movies. It just felt like another spider film.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I haven't seen that many spider movies recently. Like I have seen some, but also many years ago. So it doesn't feel oversaturated at all. Like I'm not tired of spiders, right? And if anything, I wish the spider thing had mattered more, right? Where it had actually done things that were more spider-like.
Yeah, no, I agree. As I said, they should have kind of like they should have made use of the spider when it was in a smaller form, and then just played on with the whole, the phobias. And even though I did enjoy it, like I said, I did think phobias were done well in terms of triggering my like fear of spiders. I still do believe if it was in a much smaller form, it could have been more deadlier, like shown obviously, shown more Robert. They should have just been like small progression that was seen rather than just seeing its main threat when it's big. But but
it also didn't do very much with the arachnophobia, right? Like unless you are just weirded out by spiders. Like it didn't crawl on people. It went into the one victim's mouth once, and that was a bit creepy.
I mean, you know what? They could have even made a scene where the spider does crawl, because obviously each time it eats, it gets bigger. Could have been seen this thing where it crawls into someone's mouth, and it's just eating their insides, and then it ends up exploding out the person's stomach because it's gone so big.
Yeah. Something. Yeah.
That would have been good, but yeah. All right, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed today's discussion. Let us know what you think of Sting in the comment section below. Like, comment, and subscribe, and share with other people as well. You know what I'm saying? Let them see greatness. We'll see you guys next week. Au revoir.
Bye-bye.